Oh, we're only on. Whoa, what did I do? Oh, no, not that one. All right. Good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Sud. All right, I just had to add Facebook and various other things to the stream, so we'll give it a little bit for people to join. Morning, Visakha. Morning, Matthias. Or afternoon, or wherever everybody is. It's obviously morning here at Empty Cloud. On my Discord Sangha, we came up with words in the early days because of the international community. We would have both American and Australian often, like this group. And so we came up with words like when you say hello, instead of saying, good day or good evening or something like that, we came up with the word Dave. So no matter who you were, where you were, we'd say, hello, Dave. And that would mean, that would cover both the day and the eve. You have to do these things in international. All right, so let's see here. Welcome, Samuel, Jayanta, Bhavani, Geeta. All the regulars are coming in. All right, I think we have enough people to get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, friends. So we are continuing through the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. Today, we're dealing with Vedana. Now, I don't know if this link will go through, but I'm going to be following the section on Vedana on Sutta Central. I mean, it's basically only two paragraphs, so it's not a lot what we have to cover, but unpacking it can take a while. So last week we covered that Satipatthana is a toolbox for the development of mindfulness. It is a place, the Buddha is pointing towards patanas, places, bases to establish, to develop, to practice your mindfulness. So last week we covered the body, all the various ways that the Buddha gives us little contemplations, investigations to understand what this body is. This week, we're covering feeling, Vedana. Welcome, PGS, Buddha Ruchi, and John and Dila. So Vedana here means feeling or sensation. And we're going to go over in this section. The Buddha is pointing us towards how we investigate Vedana. Where do we look? How do we figure out what this feeling is? And how feeling impacts our thoughts and reaction and views to things. So let's go to the sutta. So, and how does a mendicant meditate off observing an aspect of feelings? It's when a mendicant who feels a pleasant feeling knows, I feel a pleasant feeling. When he feels a painful feeling, they know, I feel a painful feeling. When they feel a neutral feeling, they know, I feel a neutral feeling. So it's very important here to understand the Pali word for know. This is a word that you will see when the Buddha is talking about deep, right? Pajanati just doesn't mean like, oh, I read it in a book and I know it. It means that you have investigated very deeply. You have applied your mindfulness and you understand something at a very deep experiential level. So they know this is pleasurable feeling. They know this is painful feeling. They know, pajanati, that this is neither painful nor pleasant feeling. This requires investigation. This requires delving deep into this painful feeling, this pleasurable feeling as like an object of meditation. What is it like to have this feeling in the body? You know, what really is this feeling, this sensation? And then it comes to, there's two Pali words that we should know. There's samisang and niramisang. So samisang means like carnal. And when we think, at least in English, when we think of, in the West, we think of carnal today, we think of that like carnal in relation to like sexual activity. But carnal really means embodied, like reincarnation, right? Carnal means of the body. So samisang, of the body. Niramisang, not of the body. So keep that in mind here. But when they feel a pleasant feeling of the body, they know, I feel a pleasant feeling of the body. When they feel a mental pleasant feeling, they know, I feel a mental pleasant feeling. Here, Bhante Sujato translates, and this is also other people have translated this as a spiritual pleasant feeling. Some have connected this to jhanas. That's where the spiritual comes from, like a very deep, deep samadhi where you have piti and sukha. But this is simply, and that is, of course, feeling of the mind, right? So this is, you could definitely call it spiritual pleasant feeling, but at its base root, this is meaning of the body, not of the body. So painful, pleasant, and neutral, or neither painful nor pleasant feeling can be experienced both from the body and in the mind, not of the body. When they feel a carnal, pleasant, a painful feeling, they know, I feel a carnal, painful feeling. When they feel a non-carnal, painful feeling, they know, I feel a non-carnal, painful feeling. When they feel a carnal, neutral feeling, they know, I feel a carnal, neutral feeling. When they feel a non-carnal, neutral feeling, they know, I feel a non-carnal, neutral feeling. So we'll just pause that for there. So how do we break this down? The 3 ways: pleasant, painful, neutral. Start with that. I don't think I need to describe what a pleasant feeling is. We pretty much know what a pleasant feeling is. I don't think I necessarily need to describe too much what a painful feeling is. A neutral feeling, so it would be pleasurable would be sukha, painful would be dukkha, and the third one is a dukkang, a sukhang. And so if you translated it quite literally, it would be neither painful nor pleasurable. To simplify it in English, we just say neutral. And so you might ask, well, what's a neutral feeling? And I would say, well, it's not coincidental that the Buddha has us practicing anapanasati, has us focusing on one of the neutral feelings, the breath. The body is breathing all of the time. We're not paying attention to it. I mean, unless you have like allergies or asthma like me, and you're kind of like, oh, when can I get a nice full breath? Maybe not the next 10 breaths, right? Unless you have like real issues with breathing, you're not paying attention. And even if you do have anxiety over breathing when you're doing other things, you're not paying attention to the breath because you don't need to. Something that's regular and just happening, the body's like, okay, well, I don't need to pay attention to this because it's not painful nor pleasurable. It's not something that's like bringing up a strong attention-grabbing sensation in my mind. So it's just there. It's the same thing when you do walking meditation. What do you focus on? Well, normally you focus on the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor. Another neutral feeling. If you are, walking, how many thousands of steps do you make a day? Do you pay attention to them? No. Like if you step on a nail or, hurt yourself or something like that, or you maybe, trip or have an imbalance, then you pay attention. But mostly you're not paying attention because it doesn't have that strong, painful or pleasurable valence, to use a fancy English word, right? That strong, painful or pleasurable feeling, sensation. So these are the 3 things. These are the 3 categories. The 3 basic main categories when we're talking about Vedana. When we're talking about how do we investigate. And so in the wonderful sutta called Salla Sutta, the simile of the arrow, the Buddha uses a simile. It's like when we are pierced with the arrow of physical pain, some painful feeling arises. An unawakened being is then pierced with a second arrow of mental suffering, of mental pain. I have a pain and that's, my body's in pain. Oh, this is my pain. Oh, this is my suffering. We're hit with 2 arrows, the physical pain and then mental pain. The Buddha tells us that the physical pain is probably unavoidable, but the mental suffering is avoidable. The Buddha says that an awakened being is hit with the first arrow of pain, but then you watch like some kind of like Chinese kung fu movie or something, and the people dodge the arrow, and the arrow goes flying by. The awakened being, the second arrow, it doesn't hit. Because their mind is freed. Their mind has no suffering in it. And so in the sutta, then after this part, the Buddha tells us that when we have a pleasurable feeling, we have an anusaya. This is an underlying habitual tendency. We have an anusaya towards clinging, grasping, wanting to hold on. So we have a pleasant feeling and we want to hold on to it as long as possible. We want to grasp it and cling to it and not let it go. But then when it slips through our fingers and gets away, then we chase after it. So that's our tendency when we have a pleasant feeling. Oh, this is a nice feeling. I'm gonna enjoy this. Right? We get a nice, pleasurable feeling, mental feeling in our mind when we're sitting in meditation. And we're just abiding with it, and then it changes. And then we want it. Oh no, I really like that. And because we wanted it, because we liked it, because we are sad that it has left, we suffer. And so then the Buddha says, if when you experience a painful feeling, then the underlying habitual tendency, the anusaya, is to run away from that painful feeling, to cover it up with pleasurable feeling. This is why when we're depressed, or we have a painful feeling, we go and eat some ice cream, right? We gorge ourselves on some good food. We take some alcohol or drugs, or we watch TV or do whatever kind of experience that is pleasant for us to try to drown out that painful feeling. And this is, of course, the Buddha says this is because we don't know any other escape. And so when you practice satipatthana and you're focusing, say you say, today I want to focus just on Vedana. And 100 times or more today, you can observe, pleasurable feeling. And you can observe what happens from that. The Buddha is saying, well, this is what happens. And then you observe it, it's like, yep, that's pretty much what happens. This is a pleasurable feeling. I like it. I don't want it to go away. This is a painful feeling. I don't like it. I want to run away from it. How do I forget about it? How do I drown it out? You observe that. You place your mindfulness there. Satipatthana, the foundation of mindfulness, the base of mindfulness. You use your investigation of feeling to develop wisdom and insight into the way that your mind and body work. This is what I experience. This is how I react. And you just observe that over and over and over and over. And each time you do, you gain a little bit of insight. You become a little bit wiser. And then for some things, after not too long of a time, you've gained enough wisdom that you see how much you caused yourself suffering and you're able to let it go. Just naturally. like a child becomes an adult and they just naturally let go of their toys. I don't need these anymore. These are child's toys. So you just, once you have developed enough wisdom, you naturally let it go. Say, oh, I just caused myself suffering doing this. I don't need to do this anymore. But then there are other things that are so strong, so deeply ingrained that you can do this, observe it many, many times a day for years upon years upon years. And you're slowly developing wisdom about it, but you're still victim to it. You still suffer because of it. You just haven't been able to develop the wisdom yet to overcome it. And that's okay. I'll give you an example. We're talking about, feeling related to mind and body. It doesn't look like it now. If you've never, if you haven't known me long, you might, it's hard to see, but I have lifelong food issues. Food is a friend. Food is a pleasurable experience. Food is just something to do while I'm watching TV and such and such. This is my habit growing up in lay life. So I have many, many food issues in this mind. Whenever there's a painful experience, go get some pretzels, go get something, go get this, go get that. And I can observe myself doing that. I can observe that, oh, this is a painful feeling. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling nihilistic. I'm feeling down. Let's go get some food. I know. That'll be good. And then you become 370 pounds like I was at one point years ago. And so even though I've been meditating for 17 years, and even though I've been able to overcome and let go of many things, my food issues are so strong that they're still there. Even though I'm a monk and I eat basically one meal a day with some allowables at night, even so, if my mind gets into a very kind of meaningless, depressive mode, there's that strong desire to quench that negative feeling with pleasant feeling. But when you observe that, when you practice mindfulness of eating, the feeling, the taste, and the texture of the food that you love going into you, that only lasts not even half a minute, and then it's gone. And so it's just like a person who takes drugs and you get a hit, and then it's over. Then you need to take another hit. And so, whatever it is, or, the alcohol wears off, you have to drink more alcohol. And so we see that our response to this painful feeling is causing us suffering. And then, even though you see that it's causing you suffering, you still do it. I'm sure this is an experience that most of you are familiar with. That's actually, in a way, more suffering than somebody who's completely ignorant of it, doesn't even know what they're doing. It's because I can remember one time, and this is as a monk, in my early years as a monk, and I was in a very bad place mentally, and I can remember my mind at night. I was like, oh, we should go get some food. There was lots of dana, and my stomach was bad, and I was very hungry, And I was also mentally, I was not very in a good place mentally and all these kind of things. And I was like, no, I don't need any. I'm okay. All this stuff. But then I observed my body, like a part of my mind just says, nope, I'm not buying any of this, and just gets up and goes towards the kitchen. And I'm observing and I'm trying to force my body to not do this, but I can't. I'm totally powerless of what's happening. And I was like, wow, I've been meditating all this time, and this, and this. But the conditions that have arisen, the unpleasant feeling, all of these things are so powerful that it overcomes my wisdom. And that's okay. That's what happens. So the only thing I could do was learn from this experience as much as I could. Observe it. Understand it. That's what Satipatthana is. Slowly, developing insight, pajanati, to know very well that when these causes and conditions arise, when my mind is in such and such a way, when my body is experiencing such and such a sensation, then this is my habitual reaction. And this habitual reaction causes myself and maybe even others suffering. So as I develop, as I build my insight, I naturally suffer less and act in ways that cause suffering less. That's the power of Satipatthana. Satipatthana allows you to see opportunities that you wouldn't be able to see before, to act skillful, to choose a better way. And it allows you to have time. Because you kind of give yourself time, because when you're mindful, you're just investigating, you're observing it as arises. You're not instantly just going along with it. You have the time to say, oh, wait a second. You have that, maybe even as just a split second, you can understand, oh, I'm going down the unskillful path here. What does the Buddha say? How do I endure this painful feeling? Right? Buddha talking about Kanti paramang tapo titika. Patient endurance is the best meditation. Right? Let me try to endure this as much as I can. Let me try to investigate it. Use it as my object of investigation as much as I can to really know. And so this is investigating feeling and sensation. Investigating, and again, this is, painful of the body, painful, a pleasurable of the body. And we have to understand the mind too. We have the strong depressive mind state. That's a painful feeling. A mind full of anger. Well, that's an interesting one, because if you're deluded enough, actually the anger, and you feel justified enough, the anger can feel very pleasant. Very pleasant. Oh yeah, righteous anger. We're going to go after them, blah, blah, blah. It can feel very pleasant. But the Buddha says anger is like a plant with a honeyed crest and a poison root. Because of our delusion, we feel pleasant Vedana. But really what's underlying it, it's actually a very unpleasant feeling. It's not very nice at all. So like when anger arises in my mind and I feel it, this Vedana arises, it's like, oh, this is not, what can I do to allow this anger to subside? Because it's not very pleasant to have anger in my mind. I have to be very, very vigilant to all my thoughts and my actions. Don't, right here, I'm living in a monastery with other people. If anger arises in my mind and I just let it go unchecked, then I, yell at people, or, become very abrupt with them, agitated with them, have no metta for them. And I cause up myself and others all kinds of suffering. But because of satipatthana, because I'm practicing, I say, oh, okay, anger arises in me. Oh boy, if I let this go unchecked, this is going to cause suffering. So let me abide with it. Let me investigate it. Let me practice metta. Let me reflect on the drawbacks of this anger in my mind. Right? You're using it as an object of meditation. You're diving deep into it, knowing it at such very, very subtle levels, so that you know it pajanati. You know it fully well with wisdom and insight. Very important. And so these various emotions, very strong emotions that arise in the mind, they have a valence. They have a hedonic tone. You can investigate that. I wouldn't say that emotions are purely Vedana, like in terms of the Satipatthana. Like emotions that arise also are related to our next week's is Chitta, right? The term, what we understand as emotion, there's no like one Pali term. You can't go in the sutras and say, oh, this one Pali term means emotion. No, I think, most teachers that I've heard talk about this will say that it kind of covers a lot of different bases. And I think that's pretty accurate. But Vedana is one of those things that it covers. So when we practice this, we are understanding, what is this feeling? It's like when I give a guided meditation, I often call it the Vipassana itch, right? And it's a meditation of when you're sitting and an itch or a pain arises. What does it feel like in the body? What does an itch really feel like? And you investigate it very deeply. This kind of pressure on the skin. Now, what does pain feel like? I can remember at a retreat many, many years ago when I was a layperson in my fairly early days of Buddhist practice. And one of my favorite monks in this world, Bhante Silananda, who was a monk for 10 years at Bhavana Society, just like I don't reside there anymore, he doesn't reside there anymore either, Anicca. He would talk about the pain in his knee and how when you just are observing it at a superficial level, it feels like this one large thing. But if you observe it very deeply, you'll actually see that it's many things that are rippling around, and it's actually very, very active. And for years, I was like, okay, Bhante, I mean, whatever. It's like, that's not what I see. And then one meditation, I saw it. And I observed how this pain was actually not one thing. It was vibrating and moving and changing, and this part was stronger here, and then it got less, and that part was stronger. It was actually quite interesting. And this is why when we practice Satipatthana, we're actually honing our mind, like honing, you're a cook, and you got to hone your knives so they're sharp, so you can, prepare the meal well. You're honing your mind as you practice Satipatthana. Bhante Jay, my preceptor, says one of his sayings is, if the breath is boring, you're doing it wrong. So what does that point to? It points to that you're only seeing the breath at a superficial level. Yeah, I breathe in, I breathe out. Oh, God, this is boring. My mind is bored. I'm going to go daydream. But actually, when you start to see the breath at a very refined, subtle level, it becomes fascinating. And there's like no end to what you can investigate. That's what Bhante meant. Bhante Jay meant about that. And that's what Bhante Silananda meant about the pain, the feeling in the body. You can observe that. So you can investigate that pain or that even a pleasurable experience. What does this pleasurable experience really feel like? What can you see in that pleasurable experience in the body to really know it well? Same thing with something like fear. If you really put yourself in fearful situations a lot and you really apply Satipatthana, then you will see how the body, when your mind is in a fearful state, you know, the stereotypical thing they'll call a movie a spine tingling movie. Well, you can observe that. Like there's been times where I didn't recognize in my mind that I had fear, but I recognized it by my body. Spine tingling, tenseness in the body. It says, and then I observed my mind. I'm afraid. I was able to do that because of my years of practice of Satipatthana, to be able to recognize and pinpoint Vedana in the body and what it meant. And I can also understand the Vedana of fear in my mind. It's kind of overly controlling lack of control, fear, that you have no real clarity to actually make a skillful choice. You observe that and you investigate that with Satipatthana, and then you become skillful. You say, oh, this is fear. Just like the anger, you say, okay, let's take a break here. Let's investigate this fear. Why is this fear arisen? Is it justified or is it silly? What can I do to alleviate this fear? Practicing in such a way, practicing this way allows you to have that time. It allows you to see, oh, okay, all right. You're able to patiently endure it enough to investigate it and to have enough time to make a skillful decision. And that comes from investigating that sensation, that Vedana feeling that's arising. It's a very important aspect of the practice. And it's something that can go very, very, very deep. There's no end to what you can experience, that you can investigate when it comes to your Vedana, your sensation and feeling. So always try to see more deeply. Try to investigate the more subtle aspects. And the more you're able to do so, the more wisdom and insight you gain. And the more skillful you live, and hence the less suffering you experience. But this is why in the beginning it says Satipatthana is the direct path for the abandoning of sorrow, of the abandoning of dukkha, of suffering, the abandoning of pain. Because you know this experience so well, you've developed so much insight into it, that it holds no more power over you. You don't suffer from it anymore. It just is. When this happens, that happens. When this ceases, that ceases. It's dependent origination. Oh, when I sit for a half hour and I don't really make sure that my posture is good, I have pain. If I make sure that my posture is good and I investigate my body so everything's balanced and nice, well, I'll still have pain, but it'll be a lot less. And the threshold where I can't stand anymore is longer. So you understand, and you're able to act more skillfully and able to able to live with less suffering. So in the last couple of minutes, let's just do the last bit here. Because there's always a refrain, and I didn't really, because we had so much to cover in the last one, I didn't go over this, but this end refrain is at the end of everything in Satipatthana. So they meditate, observing an aspect of feeling internally, and then they meditate externally, and both internally and externally. So it's ajatang and bahidda. So internally means of this mind and body. Externally means not of this mind and body. So you can reflect, okay, this is fear in my mind, or this is a painful feeling in this body. Oh, this is a painful feeling in someone else's body, right? Other people experience this painful feeling. Other beings, right? When I hit a human with a bat, they have a painful feeling. When I hit a dog with a bat, they have a painful feeling. When I gently rub a human, maybe they feel a pleasurable feeling. When I gently rub a dog, they feel a pleasurable feeling. Right? You understand this sensation within you and also outside. They meditate observing feelings as liable to arise and liable to cease. And as both liable to arise and cease. So this is something the Buddha is always pointing us towards. This is where the term yoniso manasikara comes in. Yoni is the womb, the root, the origin. Manasikara is to properly investigate, to contemplate. So yoniso manasikara is proper consideration, proper investigation to understand how something arises. And you also understand how something ceases. This is part of seeing with having a mind state of vipassana, when the mind sees very deeply, pajanati. Or mindfulness is established that feeling exists. So if you have trouble seeing more deeply, you just reflect on, I have feeling. Mindfulness is established that feelings exist to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness. They meditate independent, not grasping to anything in the world. That is how a mendicant meditates, observing an aspect of the feeling. So that is Vedana, sensation, feeling, and using it as an object of investigation, an object for the development of insight, to see how we react, to see how we as reactionary beings live in the world because of the stimuli of sensation that arise within us. And how, because we do it unskillfully without wisdom, we cause ourselves suffering. And so then when we do it with wisdom, we don't have that second arrow. We don't cause ourselves more suffering. So we have 15 minutes left, and so we can open this up to questions. So if you have any questions regarding Vedana, if you have anything that was unclear that I said that you'd like maybe me to talk about a little bit more for clarification, You can put that all in the chat. I think I noticed some either good comments or questions, so I'm going to check the chat real quick here. Buddha says, I am so identifying with the eating thing. My food is video games. So I had food and video games. So I know, I mean, I never played video games like 12 hours a day like some people do. Like I still, did the regular life things I needed to do. But yeah, I understand video games as well. They're an escape. It's an escape from unpleasant, like high school was extremely unpleasant. So I like to go online in the early days of the early internet, be on the early online games with my friends, and do things other than the horrible stuff that I was experiencing in the real world. I get it. Yeah. All right. So I see a question, but it's not quite related to the topic. I will answer it, but one of our visitors here raised his hand, and so did you?
Yeah. Bhante, you mentioned that anger can have a pleasant feeling that's covering the unpleasant feeling of the anger. Would you explain how that arises? How is that possible?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, when I talked about the Buddha talking about the honeyed crest and the poison root of anger, I made a connection of that with the sensation, with the feeling, right? Because we can, if it's kind of like a righteous anger, we can feel very pleasant. It's almost like, those of you who know, like the comic book hero, the Hulk, right? You become like this big being, and it's just, yeah, we're gonna kick some butt. But when you can, so the idea here is that if you've developed your mind enough that you can see it, you can actually you can understand that you're basically experiencing a pleasant feeling, but underlying that is a painful feeling. You can observe that essentially, maybe not the exact second they're happening at the same time, but they're kind of both present. They're both, they're both is maybe the pleasant experience is more embodied, and the painful experience is more mental. It's an interesting question because, in all honesty, I've never made a simile to this before. And so therefore I've never been questioned it before. And so it's an interesting thing, but I think that's what I would suggest, like observing in my own mind and my own experience. When I felt that, the pleasurable feeling is more the physical, and the negative is mental. Because when I feel anger in my mind, I actually have an aversion to it because it's oppressive. I feel heaviness in my mind when I have anger in it. It reminds me very much of the first lines of the Dhammapada, right? Where the Buddha says, mind is the forerunner of all things. Mind is their master, mind is their maker. Act or speak with a defiled state of mind, then suffering follows you like the cartwheel follows the foot of the ox. Right? In this simile, you have this ox that is connected to this heavy cart, and it's moving, and so you're like dragging this heaviness behind you. And so that's how, my mind feels. That's the Vedana of my mind when it's full of anger. It feels miserable. It feels heavy. And actually, it's funny to say this, but I have an aversion to anger. Right? So, and because actually, of course, obviously that makes my suffering even more. But in a way, it's also a good thing because it's like, well, I don't like having anger in me. It's unpleasant. And it doesn't lead to anything skillful. What techniques, what do I do so that that anger subsides? And so it's kind of like if you're not mindful of it, you can get wrapped up in the pleasant aspect of it and be unaware of the unpleasant aspect. And both of them really can cause suffering because you're chasing after the pleasant can cause you to act in ways that are unjustified and suffering towards yourself and others. And the unpleasant can feed those actions as well. So I don't know if that's even a half good answer, but that's about as good an answer as I can get.
I just had a thought that the pleasure of anger could also be mental in that the person thinks, oh, I'm powerful because I'm angry. I can get what I want. There's also this like conceit of like, oh, I'm gaining something here, and like kind of reinforces the sense of self in somebody. So I could see how maybe the pleasure of anger could also be a mental component as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So it looks like we have some questions. So let me. I don't know. It's an interesting name. I'm gonna attempt it, but I'm probably gonna do it wrong. Faiza? Faezeh. It's an interesting name. I've never come across it before. If being born in a low Hindu caste family, especially female slave, is considered previous or past karma from Buddhist perspective. From the Buddhist perspective, how you are born is technically considered your karma, yes. But also from the Buddhist perspective, your caste doesn't matter. Like, this is the thing about the Buddhist perspective. This is, you read the suttas, you see when somebody became a monastic under the Buddha in ancient India, who you were before didn't exist anymore. Right? The Buddha says you become a monastic and you give up a large family and a large fortune, or you give up a small family and a small fortune. Because what matters, once you're born, what matters is your actions, how you choose to live. The Buddha gives a simile, 4 kinds of persons. And so there's a person who is born in the light and heading towards the dark. There's a person who's born in the light and heading towards the light. There's a person who's born in the dark and heading towards the dark. Person who's born in the light and heading towards the light. So what's a person who's born in the light? They're born to a rich family. They're born very healthy, good genetics, very good looking, very healthy, pleasant. People like them. So that's born in the light. Born in the darkness, you're born to a poor family. You're born ugly, deformed, all kinds of physical problems. And so then what's heading towards the light? Living sila, practicing good deeds, practicing the Dhamma, acting skillfully. What's heading towards the dark? Doing bad deeds, not following any kinds of virtue. Kill who you want, steal from who you want, do whatever. Doing bad deeds, that's heading towards the dark. So the Buddha is telling us that no matter how you're born, you have a choice. Right? You can be born rich and you can squander it and treat people like crap and do bad things with it. Or you can be born rich and be very, very wise and skillful and act in good ways, right? And use your ability to help people. You can be born very poor and you can choose to act skillfully and do good deeds in your own way, or you can choose to act unskillfully and do bad deeds. So your past has an impact on your present and your future. That's karma. But that doesn't mean you're locked into your present. You can choose. You have a choice. Do you head towards the dark or do you head towards the light? That's the most important thing. Don't think about, oh, my karma, this, my karma, that. You have, every one of us has untold numbers, untold amounts of good and bad karma. Sometime in some lifetime, you made Genghis Khan look like a Boy Scout. And if you think of Hitler, Genghis Khan makes Hitler look like a Boy Scout. There's no comparison whatsoever, right? You've done some really bad stuff in past lives. You've done a lot of really good things in past lives. No need, so there's no reason to get attached to that. The most important thing is, are you heading towards the light or are you heading towards the dark? That's what's important. Amaranta says, I would like to understand more about internal and external. Amaranta, I don't know if I can really say much more than it means. The word means internal is of this mind and body, not of this mind and body. Different teachers will say different things because it's not really extremely clear in the suttas. The Buddha doesn't go into detail per se exactly what that is. So different teachers will say different things. Bhante Analayo, in his books on Satipatthana, if you look up Bhante Analayo Satipatthana, he will go into a bit more detail, with various sources about what that is. And I think that's a very, very good resource to understand that more. Oh, I keep forgetting that I could put questions on the thing here. Sorry about that, everybody. Bhavani has a question. Is this practice to be done all over the day and night? Know the not self and impermanence of all feelings and not to get attached to them, but to let them go skillfully to end. Well, Satipatthana is done anytime you're conscious. You can't now. That doesn't mean you're going to remember to do that, but you can do it. There's not one activity that a human can do that you can't investigate, that you can't practice Satipatthana with. There isn't one. As long as you're awake and conscious. You're asleep, probably not so much. Maybe if you do it a lot in your dreams, you do it, but I don't think there's much benefit to it in your dreams. It's just your dreams. Yeah, Anthony, a little late, true. But so this is the difference is of the body and of the mind. A feeling, a sensation of the body and a sensation of the mind. Those are the two differences. Carnal, non-carnal. An example of a non-carnal feeling is piti, when you're in jhanas. Piti and sukha. Those are feeling. Piti is a rapture, a pleasure. Like Ajahn Brahm will say, it's better than sex, right? People who've experienced it will say, oh, this is the most pleasurable experience I've ever had in my life. And it's a completely mind-made experience. It has nothing to do with the body at all. The Buddha actually calls it a wholesome experience because that has nothing to do with the senses. It has nothing to do with sensual pleasures that we chase after. So that would be an example of a non-carnal pleasant experience. All right. So Dila has a question. What's both internal and external after simply internal and external? It's interesting. I don't know that a specific example is coming to my mind exactly in this moment, but you're thinking of so both of the body and external to the body. What sensation can be that?
Maybe touching a person. You feel the contact, and they feel the feeling of the contact.
Yeah, that could possibly be. Actually, what came into my mind was like the first thing that came to my mind was sexual intercourse, but then I was like, well, is that really? But so we kind of had the same kind of thing, like your two bodies touching, maybe, I guess. But I also think that that's kind of the gross level of things. There might be a more refined level, a more subtle level of that as well. It's an interesting question. I've never heard of a monastic answer that question. So not only do I really don't have a strong ability to give a description of that, either from my own experience and study of the suttas or from hearing from other monastics. Again, it could be something that Bhante Análio might talk a little bit about in his book, although I don't remember him going into too much detail about that either. So I don't know, but it's a good question, and I'm sorry that I can't answer it too deeply. All right. All right, friends, we are past time, and we are at the end of questions. So, friends, we come to the end of our Friday morning session. Next week, next Friday, we will do Chitta, the mind. So until then, friends, and also tonight we have Monk Chat, which is again just with me. So if you have any questions, you can come tonight, 7:30 p.m. Bring all your questions, and we'll have a chat. Okay, friends. Until next time, Sukhi Hotu. May you be happy. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again.